Hi, welcome to Changemakers, a smarter school podcast exploring how to live a successful and happy life. I am Katlego Motlogelwa, your host. On every episode, I talk to great thinkers and doers from different walks of life who are at the forefront of positively impacting society. Our conversations focus on their specific journeys to achieving their goals. We talk mindsets, books, advice, and tools they use to keep them motivated. All the key ingredients you need for a happy and fulfilling life. I hope you enjoy this next episode. Like, you don't need a cashier, essentially, and everyone was up in arms, like, oh no, we need jobs, which is a very fair argument, so I think it seems like artificial intelligence has a positive to it, but there's this negative consequence that now we can do a lot of things without human beings being involved, right? Like driving cars, the cashiers, manufacturing, and you can go on, right? So what's your take on this aspect of artificial intelligence, and what do you foresee in the future? And should we be embracing artificial intelligence?
Sure, man. That question, I don't know if I've got all the answers I would like to have, but it's a very complicated one. But we were gonna get to this point anyway, whether or not we embrace it. So, if you take, for instance, in the manufacturing plant, how many people are required to manufacture, one car. That over the years has been decreasing to a point where at the moment in most plants that process is almost like fully automated. So they're in the process of trying to get this FSD out. So if they get that out, so that means then now you would be able to get a robot. I mean, I don't know, but I think they're gonna go create like this sort of like a subsidiary, the robot taxi. So you would be able to basically now get into some sort of like a taxi where there's no one driving it. So you just plug in your destination. So the guy there that used to be a driver has lost his job.
Agnamakez, imagine.
No, nothing of that sort.
Hello and welcome to the second part of our conversation with Simon Baba Bekezulu. On this episode, we delve deeper into artificial intelligence and its applications. What are the implications for South Africa and Africa? And what should we do as individuals, companies, and governments to ascertain better social cohesion and a more prosperous society going forward? Enjoy. So I want to get into, what is artificial intelligence?
Sure. So the artificial intelligence is basically the smart.
And try to keep it as less technical as possible.
Sure. So with the artificial intelligence, so it's basically the smart decision making that we are hoping that our computers would be able to make, right? To say, how do we get to a certain decision without the human intervention, utilizing what we know in the past to sort of like come up with how we think that it's going to look going forward. So that is the whole concept, right? So we're basically trying to replicate how a human mind works, to say, you've got like all these things, this is how you think, and this is the process that like the information goes through for you to come up with your information. So that's the whole concept of like what is artificial intelligence. So we're basically trying to make our machines smarter, so sort of like us, but to be able to see in the future, to give you some sort of confident metric or output with some confidence, some good confidence around it. Like tomorrow it's gonna rain with 90% certainty. So definitely there should be like a very much elevated chance of rain than if there's a 10% confidence around that.
Yeah. I don't think that any human could actually predict that even. So I mean, now I'm trying you making me go back and think. Okay, so maybe artificial intelligence is not necessarily creating machines or programs that are able to mimic human thought or behavior, but even more than what we can do. At least if you're talking about predicting things like climate change, etc.
Yeah, so I think it's actually very interesting, KG, because I think the whole fuss around the AI is that, so if I have to come and ask you, KG, is tomorrow gonna rain? The information that you have about the past 5 days is very limited, right? So even if you go outside, so all you know is that yesterday it was raining, but you don't have information around, how was the climate, in which direction was the wind, like how cloudy was it humid, so that information is what then explicitly get fed into this machine to be able to make those decisions, because now you get to a certain point. It's the same problem that you see in like the stock markets, right? So a lot of like hedge funds now are really like going very heavy on like the AI in terms of predicting the prices, how the stocks are going to look in future, because they realize that there's this thing that we call like information overload. There's just so much information. There's actually too much information at your disposal for you to basically be able to make sense of it. So this is where now this thing becomes, I would say, maybe slightly more powerful than our decision making. But it is not to say that it's not limited in what it can do compared to still like human beings. So we are still like very critical in the whole process. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to touch on that part where you're saying there are limitations to AI compared to how human beings function. But before we get there, I want to track back and say, just give us maybe examples of where AI, today is currently applied, in our daily lives, when we wake up to when we sleep, when do we interface with this technology, as just normal human beings, one. And then my understanding was that there's a difference between what's known as artificial intelligence versus artificial general intelligence, which I understood to be a more higher level of artificial intelligence, where now you are creating machines that are similar to human beings, for a lack of a better example. So just on those, can you reflect and just give us your thoughts on those pieces?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So in today's world, machine learning is basically used almost everywhere. So from you trying to apply for an account at the bank, the process that they go through, so there's like a lot of AI that's involved there on how they identify that picture that you are sending with their picture. So remember, so there's like almost in most of those instances, there's no human in between in that process that's involved in sort of like vetting there. So they have to check your picture if it corresponds with this picture that hopefully they get from Home Affairs or whatever credible source, and be able to sort of approve if you are successful. So that's what allows them like the scale to be able to say in a day we can be able to create 2,000 accounts, 3,000, 5,000, to even 10,000. But there's almost like, very limited staff that are involved in that whole process. So that's a very good case of, like the day-to-day application of like the machine learning. So there's actually quite a lot to your cell phones, so there's like so many apps that even your device itself, to how it manages, like the battery life. There's really like quite a lot of technicalities that are involved there, to basic things like your cars, like your cars. Most cars now have got, like very advanced features around, sensing if there's gonna be like a collision, like sensing if, yeah, so you're hitting this, and you're about to hit this obstacle and all that. So collect this information from all the sensors and be able to action on that. To things like self-driving cars. So I don't know, but if you look at Tesla, so Tesla, they've got something called FSD. So that's like a full self-drive. So that basically means that you would get into the car, plug in your destination, and you get there. So yeah, so that is not magic. So, like the car is equipped with these 360 degrees, and like sensors like across, so it collects all this data. But now, as you can see, so there's really, really like huge amount of data that's been collected there. So that has to be really, really processed like very fast, and yeah, so that's like a very easy application of like a machine learning. And the advantage of that is that now like you can now update your car, remotely, instead of, going to a service and you have to change this. And yeah.
Sorry to cut you a bit short there. So, you are using machine learning and artificial intelligence interchangeably. Are this the same things, or is machine learning part of artificial intelligence? Then there's data science is part of artificial intelligence. Can you just at least explain that part? And then after that, I want to do a bit of a deep dive, because when you spoke earlier, you spoke about opening bank accounts, thousands of bank accounts. You now talking about, self-driven vehicles, like what Tesla is doing. So obviously that touches on very sensitive, especially for our country and our continent, a sensitive topic regarding, unemployment, so job side stake, the more we sort of embrace artificial intelligence. So firstly, let's talk machine learning, data science, and artificial intelligence, and what that means, and then let's hear your reflection regarding artificial intelligence consequences the more we embrace it, with regards to employment and people's jobs being at risk. What's your take?
Yeah, so maybe I would just say that if you see artificial intelligence, that's what you would see in the PowerPoint presentations. If you see machine learning, that's what you would see in the code. So, but but yeah, so it's all artificial intelligence, right? So with machine learning, so it's basically you creating this algorithm, put it in your machine to make basically decision on its own. So that's machine learning from the data to make decisions, right? So yeah, so
and machine, what is
people
machine? A computer.
Machine is a computer. Yes, it's a computer. It's a robot. It's basically anything that you input the data into, so that you get this output that hopefully is well informed enough. And with data science, so with data science, it's more of an application of like the machine learning and what we know about the reality of be it the company or the processes or the systems to come up with solutions. So it, like I've said, it spends optimizing certain processes to get certain output out, utilizing certain algorithms, but it's much broader, in a sense that you've got to sort of like interact with how your computer make the decisions, to how you do the analysis of this, how you then get to expose this on because I'm sure if you go to what's the easiest example, if you go to at Google, for instance, on your Gmail account, so you would see there you've got things where you can type, and then there's this autocomplete, I want to appreciate you, and then it autocompletes for you. So it's another very good. Exactly, it's another good use case of how they've sort of like applied the data science there. There's a lot that's happening in the background to how it gets served to you as the end user, so you don't have to be worried about all those technicalities. So that's where then the data science comes in.
I'll tell you what, one thing that I like, because I would normally be, typing, and then I'm sending a document, then I forget to attach. I like that feature where it says, "Hey, looks like you forgot to attach
You
your
haven't
document." I'm like,
attached.
"Oh, geez, yes, I did." That was a very a great functionality that they've added to, like, emails.
Exactly.
So that's part of artificial intelligence, I take.
That's part of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is to just say, so any smarter decision that we are making utilizes the data and like all the processes underneath, so that is all part of the artificial intelligence, from your normal machine learning processes, your deep learning, like reinforcement learning and all that. So that is all part of artificial intelligence.
Cool. So let's get into that touchy. Well, what I regard as important. I think a few weeks ago, it was a Checkers that put out, that they'll be doing, is it self shopping? There'll be no cashiers required, in their shops. It will all be, based on basically using computers to you buy and you check out, you pay yourself. You don't need anyone to assist you as a at the front desk, like you don't need a cashier, essentially. And everyone was up in arms, like, oh no, we need jobs, which is a very fair argument. So I think it seems like artificial intelligence has a positive to it, but there's this negative consequence that now we can do a lot of things without human beings being involved, right? Like driving cars, the cashiers, manufacturing, and you can go on, right? So what's your take on this aspect of artificial intelligence, and what do you foresee in the future? And should we be embracing artificial intelligence?
Sure, man. Yeah, that question, yeah, I don't know if I've got all the answers I would like to have, but it's a very complicated one. But we were going to get to this point anyway, whether or not we embrace it. So if you take, for instance, in the manufacturing plant, how many people are required to manufacture, one car? That over the years has been decreasing to a point where at the moment in most plants that process is almost like fully automated, right? So the only people you have are people that are checking like minor defects, putting, like basic things in, but the core structure. So almost like that process is like fully automated. And it's like that across many industries. So just on the example that I've just highlighted to you about Tesla. So they are in the process of trying to get this FSD out. So if they get that out, so that means then now you would be able to get a robot. I mean, I don't know, but I think they're gonna go create like this sort of like a subsidiary, the robot taxi. So you would be able to basically now get into some sort of like a taxi where there's no one driving it. So you just plug in your destination. So the guy there that used to be a driver has lost his job.
Agnamakers, imagine.
No, nothing of that sort. So, but that's still in America, right? But again, so the worry now is that with most of what we eventually get to consume this side, especially with this revolution. So I'm sure you are aware of like how the revolutions, from the first revolution, to the second revolution, to the third revolution, to where we are now. So this now is scary in a sense that so very few processes and systems are localized, right? So that means that we don't create a lot of these things that eventually we use. So take, for instance, the cloud. Everyone is talking about the cloud. I don't think in South Africa you would go to a big corporation and they are not on the cloud, right? So that cloud now means that there's like servers that are sitting, wherever. So that guy that used to work there, maintain the systems and servers in that building, now doesn't have a job, So I think to me, it creates a lot of efficiencies in our lives. Obviously, I mean, I don't think, on the bank example, you still want to go to the branch, wait there for like 2 hours. I don't think we've got that level of patience anymore because of what we've been exposed to. So it's good that now you can open an account and you're sitting at your house. But I mean, yeah, in terms of now what's required, in from our people, it's, yeah, we need to now like start thinking very differently to how things have been in the past. The sort of skill set that's now relevant and applicable going forward is very different to what we've been exposed to. So right now, I mean, yeah, there's like a lot of issues that are debatable, from like petrol attendants, whether, like there's still really like a need for us to have them, to cashiers, if we really need to have them, and bank tellers, we need them, but how many do we actually need? To, like salespeople, if we used to think that maybe we need 20, do we still, maybe 5 years later feel like we need 20 with all this automation, with all this intelligence behind? Because as much as we create this thing, now it gets to a point where, the sort of decisions and insights that we get from the data get to a level where they are better than, the insight that you would have from this person who's been working in the call center for 20 years. So now that sort of like now brings to question as to, whether we still need as many people to come and like be call center agents and all that. So if you are underdeveloped, so what I'm trying to say is that, in a nutshell, so if you are an underdeveloped country like ours, one way or another, yes, you are going to take a beating, because we're not coming up with these IP, we're not coming up with these systems, so we consume, and on most instances, that's why you've had like a lot of like regulation, where in some instances the government, they want, when a certain role has been replaced by a system, that system either pays taxes or whatever, so that, I don't know, maybe eventually they would be able to push that back into the economy in the form of like a basic income for everyone. But yeah, at this rate, yes. So without understanding of this like digital world that we already in, that we still going very much deeper towards, it's going to be a challenge for us. Yeah, America, China, and those countries that are very much ahead in terms of like the R&D, yes, they're going to benefit a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so in summary, we can't fight against this. This is what I'm getting, and we should try to embrace it. However, we need some sort of regulations, and I like the other two things that I think are worth highlighting, and probably digging deeper into. Maybe we can't do it in this podcast. Maybe there'll be another episode, and maybe another expert, talking policy. You spoke about basic, income. I think that's probably gonna be key in the near future. I know people are against social grants, like, hey, they make people lazy, but maybe you are right. We could have some conditional, basic income, so that people who are out of jobs get a certain amount of money, using this the profits from these companies that are using heavy AI, to feed back into the system, and incentivize people to maybe upskill themselves, and try to look for other other jobs, that might still be available. You also touched a bit on that, when you were saying that, the skills over time are sort of shifting the more that we are applying this artificial intelligence. So there might be other skills that are more important, in the next 5-10 years as we go, that might not be relevant today. I mean, things like social media were non-existent 10 years ago, but now you have people forming jobs, from just running social media campaigns. So yeah, I think there's a lot to dig deeper into there and chew on. I've seen this show. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. There was this documentary called Coded Bias. I don't know if you've seen it. So there's this facial recognition technology, and it was basically what can I say, negatively, biased towards black people and females in in cases. And they were making a case also in the documentary, which I found interesting, that you spoke about China earlier, where they're using this AI to basically give people access or not to give people access to certain things. You go into a public transport, you need to medical care, etc. It's heavy AI there, where you need to use, your biometrics, to access internet, to access a bus. So they're using AI to maintain some kind of social order. And then on the opposite side, in Europe and in the US, you have companies that are not necessarily using AI for that purpose, but more to mine, data for commercial, companies, so more for profits, so it was an interesting, documentary to actually look at. What's your take in terms of how we should be using this technology today here in South Africa? What do you think we should be applying AI? Or rather, let me rephrase. What should we be using AI to do to make our lives as South Africans and Africans better in the short term and long term? And maybe if you can just add yourself a bit, where do you see yourself playing a role in that?
Yeah, I think with us, so we still have a couple of challenges. So I think some of these challenges come inherently with being a third world country. We don't have as much flexibility financially, like in the fiscus as your first world countries, for instance. But there's definitely a lot that we can do around like the public transport, So we could be basically, using a lot of data that we hopefully can get around the taxis, just to understand how we can optimize that process. Because to me, I find it very frustrating. If you go to first world countries, you almost feel no need to buy a car in most instances. But if you come here, I mean, if you don't buy a car, it almost doesn't work. Actually, it always doesn't work for you. So you need to have a car. So yeah, there's a lot definitely that we can use AI for to improve, to understand how we can improve our infrastructure, and what will that improvement translate into. Because I think now, everyone kind of like understands, okay, so we need to get people access to, proper roads, proper infrastructure, like electricity and everything. But what we are not aware of is how then will that translate into, what value would that add back into the economy? Like, would it be easier now to sort of like try and decentralize? Because I think with us, especially here, we've got this hub, like Sentin, sort of like, like Gauteng, like the hub, of business, and you go to Cape Town and then like a bit in Devon. So everything is sort of like concentrated there. A lot is like, almost everything is happening there. But I still think that there's like a very good solution where, that could be sort of like scaled out into like other provinces, for instance, and all that. But I mean, obviously, I think that the problems obviously require some further analysis around, would you still have access to the resources that you had? What would it take for you to have access to those, Because if you can create that, then, to some people, jobs will be closer to home, where not everyone has to fly into Joburg. Because now we end up with this country where we just seem like we've got these different sets of problems. The problems that we have in Gauteng are very different to the problems that you have in the Eastern Cape, Here we're trying to, try to get people to not drive a lot. But, you need a car to be able to, navigate anything, especially outside Gauteng, So that's why I'm saying, yeah, there's definitely a lot where we can use the data for. So where do I see myself in this? Yeah, no, I'm actually very interested in this. And yeah, so I think with proper understanding of our market, with proper skill set in place, it should be possible for us to basically be able to have our own economy. Because right now we are in the era where you can basically have access to anything that you want to have access to, as opposed to previously, where you were very restricted because the computer was so expensive. Right now it's very easy to do things. So yeah, it means now you could have a startup that you'll start in South Africa and be able to push that into international markets, like just a switch of a button. And yeah, and obviously we should be able to utilize the data that we have better, in a sense. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot, especially with like the coming technologies, how we're going to apply the likes of, the blockchain, like your computer vision and all those. So it's still going to be an interesting space.
No, thanks, man. Look, we could talk, I think, for 3 hours, 2 hours, about artificial intelligence, and we did not really touch a lot on what you are doing today, where you're working. But I think there were a lot of there was a lot of valuable information, on what you've said today, and I think a lot of people will learn. I've certainly learned quite a bit. That machine learning, same thing. Artificial intelligence, data science, okay, same thing. Fagala, artificial intelligence. So all these things are sort of related. Thanks for your time. I mean, and I hope we hopefully have another, maybe part 2, if possible, but just dig deeper more into the core, the pros and cons of artificial intelligence, and how, as South Africans, and probably the youth, how do we become part of, of this wave of artificial intelligence / fourth industrial revolution. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, KG.
Thank you, my brother. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks to Simon for his insights. I hope, like me, you have learned something new. This has been a Smarty School production. Catch you on the next episode. Stay smart and keep well. If you enjoyed this episode of Changemakers, please subscribe if you have not already. Help us spread the word by rating and commenting on the podcast. We like hearing from you, as this will help us create better content and reach more people. Share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues whom you think will benefit or like this sort of content. If you have questions for me or my guest, or topics that you would like us to discuss next time, email me at podcasts@smartyschool.co.za.